And of course, there's this beat too, and this I'll show you the beat first, and then I'll tell you like all the parts, like what it's based off of, because I was like learning to play drums and some other concepts of rhythm, but like it was like right. So it's basically what the lyrics in that song, but I didn't write the lyrics. The diction was exactly like the beat, and the beat was based off a few different things. There was this drummer that taught me like he taught me like hold on, try to adjust this. Oops, can't, that's not gonna work. He taught me like a flat tire because like he said if you can't do the double shuffle right, which was one of the hardest things I was having a hard time learning without flamming. He said if you can't double shuffle like that, then you just what's called a flat tire because that's what it sounds like. And then I was trying to learn paradiddles, which would be like paradiddle, wait, paradiddle, 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 paradiddle. I can't even do it. So I could always lean my paradiddles to one side, which was also based off of something my father had once showed me. Thanks to the Yanks and the money ranks, right? Thanks to the Yanks and the money ranks, right? Which is also back to that which I admire, like that crescendoing, one-handed, you know, almost like a nervous energy, but yet very controlled, caveman style drumming. Right? So then I was incorporating the flams because I was trying to practice my flams, right-handed and left-handed. Boom and boom, right. So I would incorporate the flams in there because my library of patterns was not patterns but rudiments, whatever you would call it, was kind of limited. So um, and then I started learning to piece them together, and I started by counting, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and triplets up, 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 up. And then eventually I just stopped counting and started getting it because I was walking long distances and walking long distances when I'm very tired, like I noticed like my pace would slow down, and it's okay for music to do that too. And keeping the rhythm is not always like keeping the exact tempo. So that's how that beat came to be. So when you hear that on the radio, it's boom, boom, right? There's flams, boom, 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 boom. All right, cut this back up. Boom. Right, so it's like a combination of all those things, and that's how kind of how that. Let's see if I could play it exactly how it's played. Let's see. Boom, boom. Let's see. See, when I break it down, then I have to try to remember because it kind of came by feel, but I was trying to explain how each part went, and that's kind of how each part was in there. So let's see. Yeah, boom. The lead in hand, which is right. So here it goes. Ready? It's not a mock. It's an actual explanation. It's actually what I'm doing there. Right. There's flat tire, right? Yeah, and it's also like, and if you go out in the woods today, you better not go alone. So that old stuff, I mean, it had real, like, teaching. Oops, sorry, I'm covering the camera there. Sometimes it's hard to tell where the camera is. It's different on each phone. Um, Drum cadences. One that I have trouble with is Mersey Oats. I mean, I can play the Mersey Oats, no problem. But, like, to not ghost note it or not fill it is a little tricky, and I'd like to get that one because having that rhythm of unplayed notes, which was the guy that taught me, right? He used to count in the air like this with his hand. And I remember I said to somebody, I said, he's like the greatest blues drummer around this area that I've ever heard, right? And they were like, no, he's horrible. He has no wrist. He's a terrible drummer. But I said, yeah, I know. That's why he's listened to what he's playing, like over that raw, rough style that his brothers have. But so that's what I was trying to figure out, like how to put that space in mares and goats, right? It's mares and goats and goats and goats and little lambs and ivy. And you see, I'm throwing those ghost notes there because I can't contemplate, being dominant, right hand dominant. I can't contemplate how to eloquence that feel, but that's probably what needs to happen. I probably need to land on the opposite hand I would think of. Maybe not, or maybe just move different, like when I'm doing my flams, right? Left flam, right flam. Maybe I need to think more like that, but there's the goats and goats and goats and little lambs, and ivy. See, it sounds so dry and plain, and I kind of lose the swing unless I go. So yeah, I'm learning stuff like that, and that's where that beat comes from. It's a lot of old school, and it's all the I wouldn't call them the rudiments, but it's all the techniques of people who were more dowsing style on the drums. Just like a Geiger counter. Like just like feeling it out, and maybe not having a huge library of tactics, but a few primitive techniques what were rudimented in nature, like well, nature, right? Like a flat tire, and then paradiddle to one side, like the tires kind of rolling on and off of the rim. I'll show you what I mean by that. Like, so here's my flat tire. Oops, flat tire would go like. Oh, here we go again. Hold on a second. There it is. All right, flat tire would go right, and here's the tire rolling on and off the rim. And you could ghost note that like a floaty bounce. And it's still a flat tire, as opposed to the double shuffle, which you're not doubly shuffling. You're just it's the same thing, right? See, it's very hard. It's very hard to do that crescendo with both hands without alternating or flamming. That's a little difficult for me. What was I going to say about it? I guess that's about it. Oh, and like I don't call it a shuffle. I guess they called it a shuffle because they kind of do it with brushes, and it was a lot of dowsing. Like I remember some of the old music I heard, like oh yeah, that would be a good example. Like on the original recordings, and I'm not talking about like these Hollywoodized recordings or whatever they call it, where they put the whole orchestra and the violins and kettle drums and background singers. I'm talking about the old dry recordings. You just sit there like this on. Maybe they'd hang that bathtub chain that used to hold the old white dry rubber plug to plug your bathtub drain, and they would hang that over the cymbal rack so it dangled across the cymbal, so your cymbal would sizzle when you just push it. You're not hitting the cymbal, you're not going whack, you just push the cymbal a little bit, like maybe off the side stick, right? Just a little, and the cymbal will go shh, and then you using your egg beater, your cut off egg beater, or whatever they were using for sticks, right? I don't know. For your paintbrushes, right? Whatever they were using. Dang. Which and it goes back to another guy that was teaching me, this guy Marvin. He was very sassy. Some people would say like he was not a nice guy, and he was rough. He was real rough, but he taught me a lot about music, just like explaining drums to me in like maybe like I wouldn't say 30 seconds, but maybe like a couple New York minutes anyway. But He told me, "You want to learn how to play drums? You need to forget about the drums." Of course, he said the other word, you know. But I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" You know. He's like, "You need to play the whole song on a cymbal. If you can't be satisfied with one hand on a cymbal, then forget the drums. And if you can't count, just go to the house. Just don't waste anybody's time, right?" Which was cool because like a lot of those guys maybe would say, "Oh, you're a pedestrian. You need to know jazz standards or whatever," which kind of made even thinking about trying or listening to them kind of like elitist and boring, right? So when he told me that, I was like, "Well, no, I'm following. Like, I'm feeling what you're saying. Like, tell me more. Tell me more." So he says, "All right, I'll show you." So now he's interested in teaching me. He likes to teach. So he goes to show me. He says, he says like this. I'll show you what he showed me. Marvin Smith is his name. He says, "Well," he says, "you got the whole drum set here," and he goes, "Just leave this hand alone. Don't do anything with your foot. Just only the cymbal. You know, what's the song? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But it's a swing. There's no, it's not a straight count like that. So it counts six over top of it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, which is a pair of triplets. So he counted as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He says, and then you can learn harder timings like counting in nine, which obviously I'm not quite there yet, but I'm just breaking apart my rudiments: 1 E and a 2 E and a 1 and a 2 and I'm learning those kind of things. And he says, learn to count in two, learn to count in six, and then you can add things like nine. But either way, whatever the song happens to be, play the whole song. Whether it be a clave or a broken clave or a reverse clave, just play the whole song on the cymbal. And if you can't have fun with that, then you're not going to have much success on the rest of the drums. I said, wow, that's like it's kind of like a brilliant way to look at playing any instrument. And so then he'd say, all right, because now I'm feeling what he's saying, and he's feeling teaching me. Because maybe some other guy would be like, whatever, bro, you're a wise guy. But I was listening, so he's excited to show me. So now he's like, now you could occasionally, and as he's telling me, you know, he's not moving his feet, he's not doing anything, just this. And he says, you can feel that. He goes on to tell me, I'll tell you the part first. He goes on to tell me about positive and negative energy between, the rhythm. He said, you look at the ocean, right? I like to share this because it was so enlightening as far as that conversation to music in general, or walk, walking down the street, or persevering when I'm exhausted at something, or maybe something is discouraging or depressing, and persevering psychologically to maintain a positive mental rhythm, but not necessarily have a beat to it or anything like that. But he said, think about the ocean. He said, in the waves, they go in and out, and maybe, side to side, and, so many sets will come in with a big trough where the water draws back and it'll curl over, it'll break. He said, what doesn't seem to have any sense, but it has a rhythm. Does it not have a timing? Is it not a cadence or a feel to the waves in the water? And I was like, there is. Even if it was being like mechanically manipulated by, long range acoustic devices, or, the four winds or the four seasons of the Jersey Boys, it still has rhythm because the mechanics of water is it has to pull back and a trough and then, roll up and then break upon itself, which causes, depending on how hard it's troughed or broke, it's going to change what's there, but it always has a feel to it, which kind of went back to what Child Anthony was telling me about drummer Clyde, right? Funky drummer. He said, I can't play with that clock, man. Throw that clock out the window, man. I just play what I feel, man. If it slows down or speeds up, that's how life is, man. And so he says the other thing was positive and negative. Yeah, my lips are split again. It hurts. Positive and negative energy. He said, and this is what he said. Most Where's my cup here? There it is. Most most rock drummers are positive, 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 positive. Always hitting down, you know, which led me back to what I had heard this guy tell Neil. He said, "Put your drumsticks down." He said, "Now imagine a soft shoe dance." And he was like, "Yeah, yeah." He said, "Now pick up your drumsticks." And it was kind of the same thing Marvin was telling me. So he said, when you hit a cymbal, which immediately I'm already thinking of a drum head, the same thing. A drum head is the same thing. He said, there's a call and a response. There's a an ebb and a flow and a waxing and a waning and a wave and a trough, and eventually it breaks on itself, right? Like if you were to hit back on a beat before that swale had recovered, there's a certain cancellation there, right? So I was thinking about all this stuff, and I'm like, wow, man, because I try to play guitar, which is terrible, but I like it. I'm terrible at it, but I like it, which is a certain quality to my playing that it's terrible. But I started thinking about that and how applicable that was. It made a lot of sense, which is how that guitar rhythm and the drums, but mostly the way I was playing the guitar on that same track, what they call the young blood, how that stumble came about on the guitar, because it was the hand flopping on the string, picking up on the string, hitting the drone note, and the fretting hand hammering heavily back on the fretboard, right, which was creating like a triplet stumble, like even if I didn't play the notes, it would sound like on the guitar between, the plucking hand and the hammering fretting hand, which was kind of how I was walking when I was walking like for hundreds of miles, tired, just wearing myself out all the time, right? So then, yeah, that's what I was getting to, right? That's what I was getting to. So then he says, I'll show you. Then he says, so now that you're satisfied, you're having a good time on the cymbal, and you learn to play the whole song on the cymbal. He said, now you occasionally add a drum. And I think he even took the same hand and he just, which, I expected him to pick up this hand and start going. Maybe he just picked it and he started letting it ghost on, drifted on the snare or whatever, and just lifted up a little, making a little sass out of the sizzle, right? And then he just takes that same hand and he says, occasionally, and a drum. So now I'm just like, wow, that's really happening, That's, you're right about it. And his effort was like way less than any effort I was, even though he had way more skill, he's hitting the cymbal from underneath and on top, with the same thing I was talking about, like almost like what was happening in the waves in the ocean, how once so many troughs and breaks happens, the waves have to come in sets because it's canceled itself. I've re-hit the cymbal before it's recovered from responding. So and it led me back to thinking about Brad, how Brad would hold his hand up in the air and count like that, and there was more feel in that, even if my eyes were closed and I wasn't looking at him, whilst another drummer was making fun of him, saying he had no wrist, right? There was more feel in that limitation of skill, and he'd make the face, like, just to keep that feel was more important than, of course, his brother or one of his brothers would probably turn around and be like, bro, don't play on top of the beat. Be a little bit behind it. It's his blues, bro. So he had that discipline or that respect to the rhythm, not the rhythm, but the sadness or the digging deep. Dowsing. I call it dowsing. See, they call it a shuffle. I call it a stumble because I've literally stumbled. And I kept my rhythm, walking home, 26 miles and freezing cold, almost hit by cars, and barely could make it, feet hurting or nowhere to go, and walking and walking and walking for hundreds of miles for many, many weeks and many days, sleeping on a garbage bag on a pile of leaves next to a dead animal's skull. What I found when I woke up and the light came on, and I was like, oh, ew, gross. I was like laying right next to that, but it's a stumble. So there's a discipline to that stumble. And it's not about leaving the spaces, because if I make it about, oh, am I flamming? Does it sound drunk? Does it sound lazy? Does it sound happy? Then it becomes a thing. But it's more of a discipline of like dowsing. Like it's not always going to be the same, but that particular stumble always seemed to have the same tempo. That dun dun. That always seemed to have the same feel. Boom, boom. Right, and that will be like how Marvin was playing it. Like occasionally add a drum, boom, 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 boom. Right, and sorry, I mean, and the way he was tanging, right? He was doing that, or the trough would come back heavier, which would make the sets of the count like waves in the ocean. It definitely had timing. It definitely had feel. It did not break rhythm. You could fully dance to it, but throw that clock out the window, like Clyde said, like Machado Anthony said, on Funky Drummer, right? Throw that clock out the window, man. I do not want to play with the clock, whether it's right or wrong. It's obnoxious, but and then it can be kind of fun too. Play along with a metronome and lose your spot and be like, well, let's just see if it comes back, but completely not obnoxiously or like belligerently ignore the metronome, but be like, oh well, that metronome lost me, and like have some executive decision, as they call it, right, or some authority, and maybe be surprised, which I did actually mess around a little bit to find out that the metronome actually was like, oh, let me catch up with you, which that doesn't happen, but it did because maybe like a beat or a beat and a half was missed on the metronome, so now I'm getting my doop, tick, 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 boop, in a different spot, but it still would eventually come back around on the beat, no matter what. So that's how I started realizing, like, wow, there's a timing in everything, right? So I started thinking about like that August boy who was looking for his parents, and he's just like going like this, listening to the traffic and the people shouting and being mean and being nice, and the leaves blowing in the trees and whatever was happening. That was his coping mechanism, right? So it was the same kind of stuff. Trying to think if I want to add anything else, because I don't want to make another video part to this. I just want to put it all together. Um, what else could I say about it that would be useful and helpful? Because that's the whole point, right? You know, to listen to my own video back and listen to what I thought about it helps me to learn. And if anybody was curious, I had to turn it off or listen to it. But, oh yeah, that I would add that. I would add that. Definitely add that. Like the way I learn things is like like another guitar players, they would mock me. Oh yeah, yeah. I want to say that first. Right, right. No, I'll continue on that. All right. Like other guitar players would mock me and say, "Bro, like you don't know, your diminished 13th augmented to the 15th power, or your circle of fifths, or your Mixolydian, or your Dorian, or your Lycian, or your Luciferian modes." I'm like, no, I like those Luciferian chords. They're very dissonant, and they're certainly like, not anti-authority, but they're like totally executive decision, and they could be resolved. But I liked that about Machado Anthony's playing too, because I remember that guitar teacher. He said, I can't stand your friends playing. I heard him playing. I can't stand it. I was like, why not? He's like the greatest guitar player I've ever heard in my life. And he said, he does not know the difference between a major and a minor. I was like, yeah, I know. That's what it is. Exactly. That's why he's so great, right? And that guy was a guitar teacher, so he couldn't stand to hear that guy's playing. But it was the same reason people would sit there and say, wow, that guy's out there, man. because he didn't have respect first to, you know, a mode or a mechanical discipline before a respect to dowsing in the moment, like a Geiger counter or two copper bent rods while stepping on a piece of metal or a vein of iron ore or some water. You know, there's some magnetic, even if it's not magnetic. You know, it's like not having respect to the chemicals or the mechanics of something first, but just to that moment, being in every single moment, which is where all the faces started coming from. And I remember those people were very shy and insecure about their faces too. Like I was young, and I said to him, I said, "Bro, what I like the way you play, but what is with those faces you make?" You know, because he would do like, you know, whilst he's playing. And I said, "Whoa, what is with those faces?" And I remember he said it almost like in a hurt, like "stop looking at me" kind of way. Like he said, "Bro, why are you looking at my face? Like just listen to the music." Like he was very shy, and he used to turn his back to the audience because he liked to play, man. He liked to play. He liked to emanate, and he was strong at it. And sometimes he would drink so much because he just didn't want to feel, you know, the haters as they call them, or the nonsense, or you know, people trying to stumble him, because he was willing to stumble himself. That was the fun of the music, and it's why people enjoyed to listen to him. But he would turn his back to the audience because he was very shy, you know, of the, you know, the the almost death-like faces that he would make to maintain that inner soulful rhythm. What had nothing to do with the clock. It had nothing to do with modes, majors or minors. So now I'll tell you the other part I was going to tell you about. Victor. I call him Cousin Victor. I don't know. They're all cousins. They're all a bunch of hillbillies. But, you know, don't be a hillbilly. Don't be a hillbilly. You know, you can't help where you're from. Some were born in the concrete jungle. Some were born in actual jungle. That's not my problem. Well, it is my problem, but it's not my fault. So here we are, right? Face to face, like a couple of silver and wooden spoons. Anyway, it's fun to be enlightening, but, you know, it's also fun not to be. But it's also fun to not carry it away and just be in the moment. It's weird how this computer takes my eyes, and like even as I'm looking at them in the monitor, it's like if my eyes move slowly like that, it's like totally following my eyes. It's like weird, right? Weird, strange, almost like a militant technology. But you know, human trafficking, it's an important topic, right? Lost people, even, you know, willful trafficking themselves, you know, because they're lost and they're lonesome. You know, it's, I guess, identifying people is important, you know, with doppelgangers and twins and lost twins and lost family, and people who are psychologically lost and chemically lost. So, but it's strange to see my eyes doing that on the monitor. Looks kind of weird. Anyway, cousin Victor, right? He said he plays the bass guitar, right? So he says try, you know, play one note, only one note. Pick a note, whatever note you want to play. Oh, I like that one right there. And he says now just play on one note. That's it. And think of every way, whether mutedly or stutteringly, maybe even with one finger only. You know, and muting, and, you know, up higher on the neck, different tonals, you know, more wood, more thinner and brighter and sharper, picking down near the bridge. But just play on one note and develop a groove only on one note only. And then, you know, then move around. And then move around. And that helped a lot, you know, because I actually had on my other channel, I actually made a video. You know, I get a couple of drinks and I practiced playing guitar like that. And I remember some of the nasty mocking comments and, you know, meanness, like, "Wow, bro, you suck on guitar." It's like, yeah, you know, but I don't suck life, and I don't suck, you know, good vibes. But I don't know y'all's is modes and chemicals and technologies and sciences and considerations and words and names for things, but I sure was having fun playing one note on the guitar, which is how that whole da 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 da, which they added the da 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 part. I didn't put that in there. I had different patterns I was doing, but that's where that came from. Right? That came out of the lyrics, right? Exactly. What was to the cadence of the drums, right? Right. So yeah, and that was the other thing. Like a lot of people, that was the other thing I was going to tell about that I kind of went off the track on. And there it is. I'm the same way. If I walk through the woods, I'll be like, wait a minute, I don't remember this water ditch here or this pricker bush. Obviously, I wouldn't have wanted to go this way, but oh, I see that fallen tree over there. Wow, how did I get way over here? And that's the same way I play instruments, or the same way I think. What y'all is called narcissistic people say to me. They say, "Y'all, you do this mental gymnastics. You're very manipulative." I just like the way I think like that. That's how I think. I remember I made a railing for Carlos at his house, and I did like a half lap, and then I had to tie into the other one, and I was like all upset about it. I was like, "Oh, I overcut a little on there, and I didn't like the way it half lap." And he's like, "Bro, don't touch it. Do not touch it." He was like, "That's what I like about it. You did excellent work." And he like he heavily paid me, like gave me several $100s. And I was like, "Bro, I feel embarrassed. It's not the finest carpentry." He's like, "No, it is." And I was like, "Phew." But I like overcut a little bit, and it's like strange. I could have done it differently. He's like, "It's perfect." And I started thinking that way about a lot of things. And he played drums for me one time. He's like, "All right, play something. I'll play drums for you." And he gets behind the drums and he just puts his two sticks on the drums like a dowser and just sits there. And I start playing all kinds of stuff, and thinking, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to step on a few distortion pedals and a delay and a wah, and I'm going to get louder and louder. And the more I did that, the less he played. He would just go with both hands on the drum. And I'm like, is he like mocking me? Is he not feeling it? And then the question was, should I care? He said he would play the drums. So like the more that I broke away from what he was thinking, the more he started playing. And I was like, that's cool. That worked out. So it was all based in the same thing. All, all based in the same thing. I guess that's it. That's everything. I mean, there's a lot more, but life is like a box of chocolates. There's always going to be that one in there where you're going to be like, what is that? And so you look, flip the lid up and you look at the direction box, but it's like Tetz Nikolai. It's upside down from what's in the box, and maybe they spilled out and somebody put them back in. They're not even in the right spots anyway. So then you try to realize which one that was, so that the next time you eat from a box of chocolates, you don't get that one. But somehow, this box used to have an oval one with the stripes on it. Now it's a square one without the stripes on it, and then you're like,